Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Well, I've started it, so I'm going to have to finish it. That's just the way it works, right? I've started it. I'm going to have to finish it. Now, I know technically I don't actually have to finish it, right? I can abandon this right now. I can just walk away from it, abandon it. And most likely nobody's going to even pay attention, or even I doubt I'm going to get emails going, "Hey, you started that. You have to finish it." Sometimes you'll get emails, but most of the time people are like, well, whatever. He's moved on to something else. I don't care. But in my brain, typically if I started, I do want to finish it. That's always my intention. I don't always accomplish it, but I definitely want to. So my feelings today is I've started it. I have to finish it. And well, I'm inviting you to participate in it. So are you ready? Good afternoon, everyone. It is Saturday, May the 11th, 2024. It is currently 2 p.m. Central Time, and I am coming to you live from the Theology Central studio located right here in Abilene, Texas. Now, what did I start that I have to finish? Well, I have started, and it was never my intention, a series that we are calling a Survey of Thorns. We are doing a survey of the entire Bible and looking at every passage of Scripture that mentions thorns. And this all started because I was listening to random sermons on the Sermons 2.0 app, which is part of our challenge this year, right? You're supposed to be doing the same thing. And I was listening to a sermon entitled, "Are the Seven Thunders Written in Scripture?" Are the seven thunders written in Scripture? And I was like, okay. Now, I still haven't finished the sermon, because in the first part of the sermon, he starts talking about, well, thorns. He talks about a specific thorn, the one mentioned in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7, where we read these words, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7, "And lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh." And so what his argument was in this sermon are the seven thunders. His argument in this particular sermon was, hey, the thorns, if you really want to understand these thorns, you have to look at the rest of Scripture, and then your understanding of the thorns will be expanded. And if you don't know what thorn you're currently dealing with, you have to look to the rest of the Bible. Now, at first, I was a little like, is this the right hermeneutic to approach it this way? And I still had some doubt or skepticism or hesitancy in the way he was handling it. But the more I started thinking about it, I'm like, well, maybe there's something here. Maybe I wouldn't state it the way he stated it. And maybe I would not take these other thorn passages and connect them to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. But the Bible mentions thorns in 47 verses. And if we start looking at them, maybe there's something here. Maybe each passage that mentions thorns, there's maybe spiritual lessons to be gained. Maybe there's some spiritual pictures to gain. And so then before I knew it, I kind of like, let's start a series. So I did kind of a quick introductory message. And well, then I'm like, well, now here I am. So then I was thinking, well, maybe tomorrow at Victory Baptist Church for the Sunday school hour, I'll just have everyone and we'll just start working through the passages together. I'm like, well, but I'm like, well, if I started this as a series and I knock out half of it tomorrow, that would be, that would kind of destroy this whole series idea. So then I'm like, you know what I'll do? I think maybe we'll just slowly but surely maybe take one passage a day, maybe two, and we'll just over the next, few weeks, we'll just work through all 47 verses that mentions thorns. Some of them it'll be just like, hey, these three, we don't really do much with them. Next time, we'll move on to the next one. Maybe these episodes will be relatively short. Maybe some of them will be extremely long. But we'll just kind of work through this. And before it's over, we're going to look at every verse in the Bible about thorns. Maybe we'll review some sermons that mention thorns. Who knows? We'll just kind of just see where the series goes. And I think I'm just going to keep it away from the pulpit and keep it right here in the studio. And then tomorrow at Victory Baptist Church, we'll pick up eschatology again in the first hour. And then the second hour, we may have to do some work in the book of Galatians, all right? Because all week we've been working on Galatians 5:22 through 26 about the fruit of the Spirit. And so maybe I'll go to that. I don't know yet what I'm going to do definitively on the second hour. I've got many ideas. I've just got to choose one and then clean it up a little bit. But I think that's what I've decided to do. We're going to take this survey of thorns, and this is going to be an in-studio series, and we'll just see where it goes. I'm going to just kind of each day turn on the microphone and say, all right, here's where we go next, and not really know how it's going to go. Not really have it mapped out. But it's like we are sitting down together at a table. You've got your notebook, you've got your Bible, I've got my notebook, I've got my Bible, and we're just going to work through it together. It may be messy. There may be some stumbling and fumbling through it, but it'll be real. It'll be organic, and hopefully you'll do something. Hopefully you'll gain something from it. All right. So let's go back to what we covered at least briefly in the introduction. In the introduction, remember, I told you to start making your list, and then you could go through and start, editing your list until you only have verses that are about thorns that we can do something with, right? It's not just mentioning, there's thorns in this area, and there's no real spiritual picture there, okay? But the first use of thorns is very significant. So I'm going to open up the Blue Letter Bible app. I'm going to type in thorns in the search bar. I'm going to hit search. And then it says thorns occur in 47 verses in the King James Version. So I'm using the King James. And we're going to work our way over time through all 47. Now, I know some of you may go, this is a ridiculous idea. But if you'll stay with me, look, at the very worst, just think about this. Even if you don't like some of these episodes and maybe I do 30 minutes and we don't really gain any insight, we will gain this insight. By the time you are done, you've looked at every verse in the Bible that mentions thorns. That can't hurt because that's considerable amount of time in God's Word. All right. Now you may think, well, why is it significant? Well, everything in the Bible is significant, right? Now we don't want to make something more significant than it is, but we don't want to overlook something either. We got to try to find that proper balance. Now I think the first use is pretty significant because the first use was in Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3, and if you remember the context in Genesis 3, this is the fall, right? Adam and Eve, they sin. Right? This is the fall of the human race. This is all of humanity. Sin enters into the world. I mean, this is like one of the most significant passages from a theological and doctrinal perspective. But guess what? When we think of them sinning, now, I really want you to think about this. When you think of them sinning, all right, Adam and Eve sinned. All right, there's consequences to that sin. But the most important thing is now all human beings are born guilty in Adam. We're all born with a sinful nature. Now, the fact that the fall happened, the fact that we're born sinners cannot be just immediately perceived, right? You see people. You may not necessarily see the sinful nature. Now, I think it will ultimately manifest itself, right? That all of creation is cursed because of it. There's some things that, okay, this is God's pronouncement. This is God's judgment, but can I truly see it? Well, in a roundabout way, Genesis chapter 3 kind of gives you some evidence. And look at what happens here, right? Genesis chapter 3, let's look at verse 17. All right, this is very important. And unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake, and sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. The thorns are the visible reality, the visible proof that the creation has been cursed by God because of the fall. And these thorns are now going to prove, this curse is now going to prove to be difficult and painful for those of us who live on it. And that's why it says in verse 19, if you go back to verse 17, I commanded thee, saying that thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. There's going to be sorrow. There's going to be difficulty. There's going to be trial. There's going to be tribulation. There's going to be great vexation. Why? Because now there's thorns and thistles. They're real, but they serve as a greater spiritual picture that all of creation is cursed, and now we suffer the consequences of that cursed creation. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth to thee. Thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread till thou return from the ground. For out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and dust shalt thou return. The earth is cursed. Those thorns serve as a visible reality that proves a spiritual reality. The spiritual reality is sin has entered into the world. It's there, whether you see it or don't see it, whether you think you can perceive it or not perceive it. Creation is cursed, whether you see it or don't see it. It's a reality. Well, you need proof. I don't know where you live. But if you live anywhere where there are thorns, go outside today and find one. Go find a thorn today. I mean it, literally. Go find one. If you can, cut it off and bring it inside and leave the thorn there. Now, that thorn is a reminder of it's a physical reminder of a spiritual reality. All of creation is cursed, and we live on this cursed planet. And therefore, there is vexation, and there's pain, and there's suffering, because sin brings about pain, suffering, vexation, trial, trouble, tribulation, sorrow. It's just the reality of it. We live in a fallen planet. That's why there's all the things that go on in this. Those thorns are a physical reminder of a spiritual reality. You need proof of the reality that all of creation is cursed, that sin is in this world. Go. If you need it, take a thorn and just stick it in your skin really quick. Just poke yourself really quick with the thorn. All right. And not do great pain, just a little bit and you'll go, ow. And like, what are you doing? Well, I needed a physical reminder of the fact that, sin has entered into the world. The thorns are that evidence. There's plenty of other things to demonstrate it, but thorns really demonstrate it. But just please note, the thorn is proof of the fall, but the thorns also give us that vexation, that pain, that suffering. If you're trying to clean out an area where you can grow crops, and you got to go in and try to cut these thorns down or burn them or try to remove them. If you've ever been trying to remove something with thorns in it, you end up getting sticked, you end up getting poked, and it's painful and it's frustrating and it's irritating. Well, we live in a cursed world, and in a sense, everything around us, there's thorns that constantly poke us, that constantly cause us to suffer and bring sorrow into our life. I want you to really understand that. All right. So that's the first use of thorns, Genesis 3:18. The second one is in Exodus 22:6. Now, I don't want to create it. Now, I mentioned this in the introduction. I don't want to go too far with this one. Now, here's the thing. When you start looking at these things and try to bring forth a spiritual picture, you don't want to go beyond what the text may be actually saying, right? Because I don't think there's really, in Genesis 3, come on. The thorns and thistles are clear evidence of the fall, that the earth is cursed. It is clear evidence. We're being true to the text there. The second one, I don't think there's really any spiritual picture here that is meant, but you can tell me what you think. All right, so Exodus chapter 22, all right, this is all about laws regarding restitution. And it says, in fact, let me see here. Do I have my other Bible? I don't think I have my other Bible. Where is it? Let me look. I don't see it. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull up this from a number of translations. All right, I'm going to pull this up from a number of translations. I know I just messed myself up because when I do this, it's going to close out the Blue Letter Bible app, but that's okay. I want to just see how this reads in a number of translations. All right. Exodus 22:6. If a fire breaks out and spreads into thorn bushes so that it burns shocks of grain or standing grain, or the whole field, the one who started the fire must make restitution. So if a fire breaks out and spreads into thorn bushes, so it gets into the thorn bushes, I guess the idea, then the thorn bushes go, they just ignite and then it spreads. So there's a fire, it gets into the thorn bushes. I guess that serves kind of, it just accelerates it. It kind of explodes and then boom, it burns this other stuff. You've got to make restitution. New Living Translation, if you are burning thorn bushes and the fire gets out of control. All right, that kind of states it in a different way. You're trying to get rid of the thorn bushes. You're trying to get rid of it. And then boom, next thing you know, it spreads and it burns these other things. You have to make restitution. If fire breaks out and catches in thorns so that the stacked grain or the standing grain of the field is consumed, he who started the fire shall make restitution. So it's the idea, if you try to burn these thorn bushes, it seems to state that it could get out of control. Maybe because the thorn bushes are considered, now by no means am I an expert on this, so by all means anyone can correct me here. But are the thorn bushes, when you try to get rid of them, they're difficult. And if you try to burn them, there's at least the potential that the fire could get out of control. Now, you see that there's a desire to maybe make that a spiritual picture. At first I said there's nothing here. But when we if thorns represent kind of they are the proof of the fall. They represent things that are sinful, things that create the results of sin, or the things that create vexation and pain and difficulty. When we try to get rid of some of these things in life, right? Especially if we connect thorns. If we connect thorns with sin, right? If we connect the thorns with sin, I don't know if we can, but I just know this. There's times in our life when we try to get rid of things that it ends up burning and causing great pain and suffering for other people. I don't know if there's a spiritual picture there, but in this particular case, in Exodus 22:6, if you're trying to get rid of thorns or thorn bushes and it catches everything on fire, you have to make restitution. So on one hand, very much part of like the civil code for Israel, the law that governs how they work as a nation. All right. So we understand this as kind of a civil code, a civil law for them. The basic concept is though when other people are damaged because of your carelessness or whatever the case may be, you have to sometimes make restitution. If we take it as a spiritual picture, sometimes when we're trying to get rid of the thorns, the things that are causing pain and vexation in our life, sometimes other people can get hurt by it. I think maybe there's a spiritual picture there. I don't want to take it too far. I'll just kind of leave it there. I think that's it. Put it this way. That is not the intent of the text. The text is not trying to give us a spiritual picture, but it's hard not to see maybe a little one, but I don't want to go too far. You can give that some thought. Now, let's go back to the Blue Letter Bible app. I'm going to type in thorns again. All right. Now we can expand this a little bit here. All right. We can go to Numbers 33. Numbers 33. Numbers chapter 33. Numbers chapter 33. Let's go to verse 55. Now here God is giving Israel specific instructions when they go into the promised land, what they are to do. In Numbers 33:55, we read these words. Very important. Numbers 33, verse 55. But if you will not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you. All right. So they are to go into the land and there's people they are to drive out. They are to push these people out of the land. They're given specific instructions to do that. Now, we could get into the philosophical, moral, ethical questions this raises, but ultimately God says you're going to go into the land and you are to drive them out. No questions about it. These things have to go. These individuals have to go. Right? But if you will not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall come to pass that they which you let remain then shall be pricks in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and shall vex you in the land wherein ye dwell. You've got to drive them out. If you leave them, they're going to be a thorn in your side. They're going to lead to difficulty. They're going to lead to pain. They're going to lead to suffering. So once again, the thorns represent, like in Genesis 3:18, clearly, that's the visible proof of the ground being cursed. And it's going to cause sorrow. It's going to cause pain. Well, here, the thorns represent the very thing that God says to get rid of. You decide not to get rid of. You decide to leave it. It's going to be a thorn in your side. It's going to cause vexation. It's going to cause pain. Now, in this particular case, the thorns here is being used symbolically, but it represents the people in the land that they are to drive out. They don't drive out, and what happens? These people become a thorn in their flesh. And it leads them to sin and compromise and difficulty and all the negative things that arise from it. So here's what I want us to do today. I want you to think about things God clearly tells us we have to get rid of. They cannot be a part of our life. Either he says it in a very explicit way, or it's clearly implied. This is what I was thinking about. Okay, hey, get rid of these people. They're going to be thorns, right? I immediately started thinking of this. Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 16. These 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. Now, if God hates these things, if these things are an abomination, then what does that tell you? These are things we need to get rid of, things we cannot, in a sense, leave in the land. We have to get rid of because if we don't, they're going to serve as a thorn in our flesh, and it's going to be a source of vexation, pain, and sorrow. It's going to be difficult. What is the first one? A proud look. The first thing we have to constantly try to drive out of the land is pride. If we don't, pride is going to be a thorn in our flesh. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to write down the thorn of pride. I want you to do this, and I want you to just focus today on how pride has been a thorn in your flesh. The ways it's caused vexation, pain, sorrow, trial, tribulation. No. Stop. I know what some of you are doing. Some of you, you're the wives and you're writing down how your husband's pride has been a thorn in your flesh. No. Husbands, I'm not asking you to write down how your wife's pride has been a thorn in your flesh. No, I'm not asking you to tell me how your pastor's pride has been a thorn in your, I'm not asking you to tell me how your boss's pride, your pride. How has your pride? God hates a proud look. How has your pride been a thorn in your flesh? Now, sometimes your pride is a thorn in someone else's flesh. But in this particular case, how does it cause vexation? How does it cause pain? How does it cause sorrow? How does it hinder spiritual growth? How has it become difficult in your life? I want you to consider the thorn of pride. Now, in Numbers, hey, these are these groups of people that they're to drive out of the land. And if they don't do them, it's going to be pricks in their eyes. It's going to be a thorn in their flesh. It's going to be vexation. It's going to cause problems. It's going to cause difficulty. It's going to cause sorrow. It's going to lead to sin. How has pride been a thorn in your flesh? Oh, come on. Think of some ways. How has it led to great disaster in your own spiritual life? Pride has caused me serious problems in my past, serious problems. And I know that pride is that's why I try to be so careful, right? I do everything I can. From the minute I became a pastor, I've told you stories, like our church sign. They're like, so do you want your the different, your degrees listed, masters, bachelors, do you, no. Don't add any of my accomplishments to the sign. In fact, don't even include my name. And they were like, what? You don't want your name? No, I don't want my name. This church is not about me. If it becomes about me, even on the podcast, I don't want it to be about me. I don't want my picture there. I don't want my picture. I don't want my name. I'll get emails. So who's the host of it? Who cares who the host is? Who cares? I'm the nameless sinner in front of a microphone. I'm a sinner. Do you need to know anything else? My name is sinner. My name is sinner. My name is failure. My name is makes mistakes, thinks things he should not think, does things he should not. I'm the sinner. If it becomes anything else, it becomes about me, and it becomes about me, no matter how godly I may try to be. Pride pride. And I've seen how pride has been detrimental in my spiritual life over and over and over and over. It's a thorn in my flesh. Come on, it has to have been a thorn in your flesh. We have to drive it out of the land. They had to get rid of the Canaanites and the Hittites and all of the other ites, right? That's what they had to do. And it was going to be a thorn in their side. They don't do so. I end up with idolatry, marrying people they're not supposed to marry. It just becomes a mess for Israel. Over and over and over again, they run into this same problem. Well, we got to drive out pride because God hates pride. He hates a proud look. A lying tongue. A lying tongue. God hates lying. How has lying, how has deceit been a thorn in your side? Caused vexation, pain, and sorrow. I'm just choosing these. You can, now just remember, don't choose things that's more of your own personal conviction. Well, I think that thing is a thorn in my flesh. It may be, and it may be applicable, but in this particular case, we're trying to stay as true to the original text. God told them to drive these people out. Think of those things God is explicitly telling you, no, get rid of that. That is the thorn. How is so the first one is the thorn of pride. The second one is the thorn of lying. And what way has lying showed up? Come on. In what ways? Have you shared fraudulent information on the internet? Misinformation? Have you borne a false witness? How has lying? Because it's a thorn, and it will cause sorrow, it will cause pain, it will hurt spiritual growth. Now, the third one is hands that shed innocent blood. Now, I think this literally is obviously hands that kill people, right? But how have you mistreated people and hurt people? Is that a thorn in your flesh where you've mistreated and hurt people? And in some cases, you don't even think that you've done anything wrong. Are you really quick at seeing how you sometimes you run over people, you treat people poorly, you gossip, you slander, you hurt them, you destroy, you kill their reputation, you literally destroy them, maybe in your thoughts, maybe in your mind. Now, a heart that deviseth wicked imaginations. A heart that deviseth wicked imagination. Now, this one is, everyone can write this one down because this is our sinful nature, which we are constantly supposed to be fighting against and mortifying. Now, we know we're never going to ultimately win this, but that's where everything begins. We have a heart that deviseth wicked imaginations. Well, how frequently is your sinful heart, your sinful nature, a thorn in your flesh? It's continually. It's there 24/7. So you have the thorn of pride, the thorn of a lying tongue, the thorn of hurting and damaging and killing people, whether physically or, all the other ways, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. A heart that deviseth wicked imaginations. This is the thorn of our sinful nature. This is where everything arises from. Feet that be swift in running to mischief. Do you run to creating problems? Or do you run into stirring the pot? Do you run to mischief and creating difficulty and that you're just constantly the one running into problems and difficulty? All right, that would be applicable here. A false witness that speaketh lies. To me, that goes right back to the lying tongue. And he that soweth discord among brethren. Are you the one that always creates problems for people? Are you the one who always ends up saying, did you hear about so-and-so? And did you hear about so-and-so? And did you hear about so-and-so? And you create the problems because of your gossip and your slandering? Now, you can identify these thorns any way you want. What I want you to do is I want you to write down 6 thorns of things that God clearly says get rid of, he condemns, and how they manifested in your life and the problems they've caused. Now, again, a lot of times when I do these kinds of series, people will not actually participate. And there's nothing I can do about that, right? All I can do is say, participate. And if you will benefit from it. But literally write it down. 6 thorns. These are the things you're supposed to drive out of the land. Or they're going to be a thorn. They're going to create vexation. Like Genesis 3:18, it's going to be sorrow. It's going to create problems. Now, trying to get rid of these things, sometimes then you spark a fire and you end up hurting other people trying to get rid of these things. All right, we can go back to the Exodus passage. Again, I don't know if that's actually applicable, but you get the idea. Let me read that passage again in Numbers. But if you will not drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, then it shall come to pass that those which you let remain of them shall be pricks in your eyes, thorns in your side, and shall vex you in the land wherein you dwell. I don't know about you. I am vexed every day because of these thorns that remain. These things that I have not driven out. Now, and ultimately, we're never going to drive them out. Never. But it's something we need to identify and see. And the main thing, I don't even want you to try to write down how you're going to drive them out. I want you to just simply write down what the thorns are that are left, that you've left, and how they vex you, how they cause you problems. I want you to identify what it is and what it does. I'm not trying to get you to come up with 7 ways to fix it. I just want you to identify the thorn of pride. Here's how pride is clearly in my life, and here's how it vexes me. Here's how it's a thorn in the flesh. Here's how it causes problems. Here's how it clearly if you identify it, you're at least one step closer to at least being able to if we can recognize it, we're better off. Our problem sometimes is we don't want to recognize it. Go to Joshua 23. Now, some of these are going to be repetitive, so we'll try to add them to this. Joshua 23:13. Joshua 23:13, know for a certainty that the Lord your God will no more drive out any of these nations from before you, but they shall be snares and traps unto you, and scourges in your sides, and thorns in your eyes, until you perish from off this good land which the Lord your God hath given you. Now, God is like, I'm not going to drive these people out. God is going to keep them here. And guess what? These thorns are now going to be, in your eyes. Now, this is the same concept of these things we have to drive out. So here's what I want you to do. All right. In Numbers 33:55, I want you to identify 6 thorns of things that God clearly says to get out of your life. And I want you to identify them and say how they become a thorn in your flesh, how they are vexing you, cause you problems, cause you trouble. I want you to really identify them. Right? That's simple. That's straightforward. Then in Joshua 23:13, the first thing I want you to do is identify, why is God not going to drive these people out anymore? Why is God going to leave them there? What leads to God to make this decision not to drive them out? I want you to identify that. Then I want you to think of how these things that you've left in the land that's not being driven out, how these things blind you. We talked about how they cause you vexation and pain and suffering. These are, look at how it's stated in 23:13. These are going to be thorns in your eyes. If you get a thorn in your eye, you're not going to be able to see. I want you to see how these things that you identified, how does pride blind you? If I'm going to identify the thorn of pride, well, guess what? Pride blinds you. When you're prideful, you can't see. You can't see your own weakness. You can't see your own vulnerabilities. You just think you're better than everyone else. You're not teachable. You become blinded. Think of the ways these 6 things you've identified, how they blind you. But so Numbers 33:55 identify 6 basically thorns. These things represent things that are supposed to be driven out, but they're still there. And identify them and explain how they have been a thorn in your side, the pain, the suffering, the vexation, the things that they've caused. Be very specific if you can. Then in Joshua 23:13, why did God decide not to drive he said, the Lord your God will no more drive out any of these nations. Why is God no longer going to drive them out? What led to that? And then I want you to identify how those 6 things you identified in Numbers 33, how these 6 things lead to blindness. How you're blinded by them. I don't want you to come up with 6 ways to fix it. Oh, you're going to do this. You're going to read the Bible more. You're going to go to church more. You're going to pray. Stop that. I want you just to say, here are the 6 thorns. Here's all the problems they cause. Oh, and this is how they lead to blindness of some sort. They impair my spiritual vision. They blind me. All right. Now I'll stop right there. right? I'm going to stop right there. I want to go further because the next two are in Judges. But in Judges 8, we get the wonderful Zebah and then Zalmunna. Zalmunna? Is that how you say it? All right. We're going to get some things that are going to be difficult. Oh, then we get Sukkoth in Judges 8:16. Oh, we're going to get some wonderful things to try to pronounce, but that's okay. We'll make sure we're ready to go when we get there. But this gets us from Genesis 3 to Joshua 23:13. All right. Now I would love to get your feedback on the Exodus passage. I don't think it's really there to serve as a spiritual picture, but it's hard for me not to see a little bit of one. Because when you try to identify these thorns and you try to burn them or get rid of them, man, many cases it spreads and other people get caught up in you trying to get rid of your thorn. But maybe doesn't work. I don't know. Genesis 3:18. So your assignments again, Numbers 33:55. God says, drive these people out. If you don't, they're going to be a thorn in your side. They're going to cause pain, vexation. Going back to Genesis 3:18, sorrow. It's going to be difficult. It's going to impair spiritual growth. It's hard to grow things where there's thorns. You got to burn the thorn bushes before you can plant and grow, right? Okay, so in Numbers 33:55, what I want you to do is identify 6 things that God clearly says get rid of. Make sure it's things that God explicitly says, get rid of. This is wrong. He condemns it. Now, once you identify those 6 things, I want you then to say, how have they caused pain, sorrow? How have they been a thorn in your flesh in your Christian life? They may have been a thorn in your flesh for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. They may still be a thorn. And other people may be able to tell you they're a thorn because they too get poked by it. Again, your job is not to try to figure out what you're going to do to fix it. You just identify it. Then in Then in Joshua 23, verse 13, what I want you to do is take those, first of all, identify why God is no longer going to drive the people out. Why? Why did God's like, I'm not going to drive these people out anymore. All right. But those that remain, they're going to be snares and traps unto you, and scourges in your side, and thorns in your eyes. I want you to see how those 6 things you identified, those 6 thorns that you're supposed to drive out of the land, but they're still there. I want you to identify how they're impairing your spiritual vision, how they blind you. I'm not telling you how you're going to fix it. I want you to see how they impair your ability to see. They impair your perception. Okay. I think we're on to something. Here, right? It's not perfect. It's not all fleshed out. It's not laid out perfectly. I know that. But hopefully you'll participate. Again, these kinds of series are of no value to people if you just listen. If all you're doing is going to listen here and not participate, this is basically like you turning on a YouTube video of someone exercising. It may be fun to watch, I guess, but you're not going to get any benefit from it. You're not going to get any benefit from that. This is like a Bible study exercise. This is really what this is. This is going back to, in fact, I should have just placed this under the Bible study exercise series, but we created our own separate series for this. And hopefully all these messages together, people will find this interesting, and you can get other people to participate. Hey, what are you doing right now? I'm doing a survey of thorns. What? What? Who would do something like that? Well, this podcaster who's out of his mind. Okay. But you can ignore everything I say about each one and you can do your own work. All right. Email me, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. And just a quick reminder, if you appreciate all the work that we do, or I do. I always say we, as if there's other people here. If you appreciate all the work I do on this podcast and you would like to support us, you can do a couple of ways. You can go to theologycentral.net, theologycentral.net, hit the donate tab. You also, if you're using the Church One app or Sermons 2.0 app, you can, or even on the Sermon Audio website, you can look up Theology Central and hit the Give tab. You can also go to, I always forget the web address for this one, because we just set this up recently. Theology and the letter C, theologyc.net. If you go to theologyc.net, theologyc.net, and you'll see over there in the right-hand corner, the little 3 lines, and you hit that, and it brings down the drop-down menu. Hit Give, and it will open up the Give tab. If you'd like to support what we do, we greatly, greatly appreciate it, because we want to make this free for you, but it costs us, all right? And so we appreciate that. On the other podcasting apps, there is commercials currently. I think they're going to be going away. I think I'm just going to get rid of that idea. It's somewhat beneficial, but yeah, I think we're just gonna get rid of that. So if you would like to support, great. And whether it's $1, $2, $3, $4, $5, great. If you can't, don't worry about it. Don't ever worry about it. Don't ever feel. Usually what happens, the people who can't really give are the ones who give. And I always feel bad because they're the ones who do the sacrifice. And you always feel bad about that. If you can't, don't. If it's going to cause difficulty, don't. All right. But we do appreciate any assistance in helping us cover the cost of bringing this to you. All right. Thanks for listening. I can't wait to give your feedback on this. Hopefully you're having a good study on the Thorns. And if you're finding it beneficial, I would really, look, this is one of those series that I kind of just stumbled into. And now I'm kind of like, should I have done this? But then there's parts of this I'm like, maybe we're on to something. Maybe this could actually be beneficial for all of us. Maybe there's something good here in this. I don't know. At the same time, I don't want to be reaching too far, but I think we're being pretty fair to the text. All right. Email me newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. Everyone have a wonderful Saturday. God bless.